you need a product that is good enough to have word of mouth. And if you have that, then everything you do works. And it's just a matter of trying to like pick the lowest hanging fruit. If you do not have that, nothing you do will work. And it will be this eternal grind of like pushing this massive snowball uphill, and it'll never actually reach the peak.
Everyone thinks they're an entrepreneur. What I hear you saying is somewhat of an artist, of something different that's really going to serve people.
I mean, I think people who get things to work are that.
Entrepreneurship is a real roller coaster. There are so many ups and downs. There have been so many moments where you get stuck and then you get unstuck and then you get stuck, and the real entrepreneur has to figure out and stay with it tenaciously to get unstuck. And that's what we're going to talk about today with my guest, Adam Robinson. Adam went from 0 to 25 million in ARR over 5 years. Sounds easy being the founder of retention.com? Not at all. In this episode, we're going to share with you how he did it. What seemed like an easy formula turned out to not work at all. When he had no other options except to quit or figure it out, you're going to hear Adam's story of the little things he had to do in his own mindset and principles that he adopted that made him ultimately a success. Adam is also a leading business influencer on LinkedIn. Adam's going to share with you the difference of the 4 other people who are trying to do it versus his audience and why he's had such great success through storytelling, radical authenticity, and creating value by creating not just principles that you can hear on ChatGPT, but custom crafting them as an artist. He'll share with you all these fascinating details that I think can really help you as a business owner really go to the next step on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. There is so much for you to learn on this episode, and I can't wait for you to listen. Enjoy. Hi, this is JP Newman on Investing on Purpose, and welcome today to our show with Adam Robinson, founder of retention.com. Adam, it is so great to have you here today. Brett Hurt, our mutual friend who also was on the podcast, said, we must meet and I must hear your story. That was the text from Brett Hurt.
Well, here we are. Hopefully it's as good as his is, or at least close enough.
I think it's going to be. So you guys are going to explore with us, Adam's journey, and it's pretty incredible. In 5 years, he bootstrapped a company from 0 million to 25 million in ARR at retention.com. And more importantly, it's interesting that you came from a Wall Street background, credit swaps, a pretty lifeless thing, and then into this company that now has so deep in storytelling, purpose, and helping entrepreneurs lift them to their greatest good through your podcast, through your company, through your software, and your booming LinkedIn. It's pretty neat how you've connected all the dots there together. Just to start, Adam, tell us a little bit about retention.com. Like, what's that all about?
So retention.com is, we help e-commerce stores and B2B companies take their anonymous website visitors to known. What does that mean? Someone can hit your website, not fill out a form, and we can figure out who that is. On the e-commerce side, we'll help you send out more abandoned carts, more abandoned product like emails. On the B2B side, we'll shoot a LinkedIn profile to a Slack channel so that your salespeople can just like follow up with these people around the site.
So it sounds like in this episode, we're going to talk about lots of fun stuff. We had a cool lunch. So we got to talk about, I definitely want to talk about your journey because it's incredible how you got from New York to this very socially impact. And you're saying how important that is to you. Also, LinkedIn, I was just fascinated at lunch. Everyone's trying so hard to find the secret of what works on LinkedIn, such a business address as opposed to like Instagram or some of these other ones. And I'd love to chat with you about that. And also just kind of going forward. I mean, you've really been kind of, as you said, you are kind of new to this, going from the entrepreneur with emptier pockets to an entrepreneur that in 5 years has really had big success and navigating your way to meaning, which is what I love to talk about
right
in the pillar. So we'll jam there first. Just to start, like, so you wound up, like, did you start in Wall Street? Like, tell us a little bit about like where you started.
Yeah, so I graduated from Rice University in 2003, and there was that tech bust, and like it was not. I always kind of like was interested in entrepreneurship, but this was not an era in which you could just graduate with no experience and go raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to like build a software company, which you can do now, which is wild. And then I was like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. I want to make money. Might as well go work at an investment bank. It was kind of like investment banking or consulting. That was like a path that if you could get those two jobs, you kind of did where I went to school. So I worked at
It's still that way because my son's in business school in Miami and they're making that sound like those are the two prizes.
Right,
So
yeah.
it continues.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I just stuck around for a really long time. I mean, most people do that for a couple of years and then they go do something else. But like, I lasted like a decade in this crazy job, credit default swap trading, at this very cutthroat place, Lehman Brothers. And I get there and. Kind of the expectation, you move from Houston, it's like, I'm going to go do my 2 years in New York and then like come back and then just do something completely unrelated. But it just kept getting better and better.
Better in what way?
I mean, financially, my level of promotions in financial success was just far beyond what I had ever imagined it would be at an early age. And it was really, that market, credit default swap, they made a movie about it. I mean, it was kind of like it went, it like was, the best place to be in the world. And then all of a sudden it was sort of indirectly related to the whole thing coming unwound,
The whole mortgage-backed securities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I traded the corporate side, but still it was like those derivatives in general and their creation added so much leverage into the system that like it kind of made the whole thing explode. The interesting thing and how it relates to my current kind of like philosophical approach to entrepreneurism is, while I didn't know it at the time, I can very clearly articulate that the value system there is wild. Like you are, with the job that I had in the place that I was at, and I think it's the same for most of these places, particularly in trading, your worth as a human being is entirely related to how much money people perceive you extracting from the system. Meaning, if you are like, 10 times the normal in that category, like everyone treats you like a god. If you have a couple of years where you're not making any money, like you're not only not cool, like you're out.
Wow.
You're just gone.
Almost feels like a pretty boiler room. It's like a boiler room at the end of the day. Like you're either producing or you're not.
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, I think there's a little more buffer from the machine at one of those bigger places, but at the end of the day, it is very much that. And there was no training, it's like that place in particular, there's no mentorship. It's like they sit you down, they're like, the people who do well just get it immediately. And if you don't get it immediately, you're going to be gone, and that's just going to be what it is. So the interesting thing to me is the whole time that's happening to you and it's your reality, you kind of don't know anything else. And my dad was a trader, so he sort of thought, I don't know that he thought that about self. I think he matured into not believing that so much, but man, you're in your 20s and you're just like, I'm trying to climb this ladder as quickly as possible. Like, I'm going to just play this game how these guys played this game. And that is what the game is.
Yeah. But like I said, my son being a freshman at business school, when I was at his orientation, I'm paying a lot of money for University of Miami.
Right.
And they're basically saying, we're going to get your son prepared by his junior year to have an internship at one of these big consulting firms, as if that's the prize. We're going to get him on LinkedIn. He's going to get a resume. Like every year he's going to work at a summer internship job so he can get a job at a management consulting firm,
right?
Or a Wall Street, and I'm just like, investment banking firm. And I'm like, so they're still minting him that way.
Yeah.
And I don't quite understand that is considered like the unicorn goal, and there should be no other goals for that business is so much more three-dimensional, but they still treat it very one-dimensionally. So you won the prize. You're obviously smart, good grades. You fit the thing. You obviously be there for 10 years. You must have been producing. You said you were making money. So why leave? I mean, you're 10 years into this thing. You're making money.
So
what happened?
Normally, they make it really hard for you to leave. They just know. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but there's a lot of truth to it. They kind of know the exact amount they have to pay you to get you to stick around for another year, like past a certain point. And really what happened to me is I kind of made a bad career move and fortunately got pushed out. So the 2008 crisis happened and everybody around me had out-of-body positive experiences. It was strange because that's like what's called a bear market product. It's like when the market's going down, the credit default swap thing is what everybody wants to talk about because it's like insurance against credit default. So into Lehman defaulting, Barclays bought all the people in the building and everybody got paid tons of money and we're sitting there, we crushed it the year afterwards because you just bought everything.
So you were there when Lehman closed?
There when it closed. We came back to the same building with the same group of people and we just kept doing it.
How many days were you interrupted between Lehman and Barclays?
I mean, it was like a week to get the deal done. It was not long at all. I was like looking, I wanted to like go be a ski bum. I was going to try to like, because our job was in very high demand because there's so much volatility and flow going through that market that just the skill was super valuable at the time. I wanted to like put a couple banks against each other and be like, well, I want to start in March. Give me a little ski season. I'm going to go to Vail and work the lifts or whatever.
Nice.
Or just ski every day.
Nice.
But that didn't happen because they're like, nope, we need you right back. And like, here's a huge amount of money and like, come do it. So a year later, my boss was convinced that Europe was going to have a levered unwind, just like the US did. And a lot of people thought that because like those countries were just in really bad shape from a leverage standpoint. And it never happened, but he sent a lot of us over to London to go live there and effectively just short the market and sit there and wait for it to happen. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens when you short the market and sit there and wait for it to happen and it grinds higher? No one makes money, right? Like, so we all lost money. Well, I did, and half of us did. And then, I didn't get paid. And then I had a personal situation where I wanted to move back to New York for like a relationship. And I took a job at this place that I probably shouldn't have. And like at that time, the skill set that I have trading credit for default swaps, the value of that was going down rapidly because this market was getting regulated, almost out of existence. It like went from it was shrinking at a rapid rate at like 50% per year, probably for like the 5 years after the crisis. So that's a difficult environment to go try to work your way back into if you just left to go to London and had a bad year because of what I said. It's like, well, I was the man the year before, but like now all of a sudden I'm not.
You're quickly a commodity.
Yeah, and like I'm looking at it from the outside, and like whereas I was, trying to get people are trying to pull me away from the seat that I was in a year before. Everybody's firing people a year after, and the people who have the good jobs, they're holding on to their seat as tight as they can. And it's just a totally different dynamic. I took a job at a hedge fund, it didn't work out. And then, this relationship that I went back for blew up in my face. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there looking at my life, I had a pile of cash, probably bigger than most 30-year-olds did. But it was by no means like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like, be a philanthropist or something like that. Like I needed to do something at some point. So it was like I had this total, complete identity crisis. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, my opportunity in what I used to do is not attractive at all. I would be taking like effectively a huge demotion for something that I didn't even know that I wanted to do anymore. Like I kind of like been there, done that.
How many hours is an average, like would you say your average work week was as an investment banker?
So the trading desk is different than like the corporate finance side of it. The corporate finance side of it, they absolutely destroy you in that category. I mean, you're over 100 hours every single week as a young person. Wow. So this may not sound that much better, but like through the sort of glory years of my trading career, I was getting on the desk at 5:45 a.m. And by the way, I was running across the Brooklyn Bridge every day during the week, 250 days a year, rain, snow, shine, whatever, because the gym wasn't open at 4:45 when I was doing that. And then, I'd get to work at 5:45, we'd leave at 5:30, go to a bar, go to a customer dinner or something, go to sleep at 9:30 or 10, everything, every single day. And that's what it was. It was great when it was great, and it sucked when it sucked.
So you're sitting there in New York, you're like, I've got money, but something didn't sit right. Like you didn't want to jump back in the game.
I had no idea what to do,
right?
Yeah. And for 6 months, I just kind of partied, like I didn't even think about it. I kind of hid my total misery and confusion about my life by doing that, which was in some ways fun, but most ways, now that I reflect on it, very unhealthy. And then, it kind of I had this entrepreneurial seed planted in me because my roommates, the day I showed up to Manhattan, they were building this website called Vimeo. Like in one of the bedrooms, they were both sitting there and this Dreamweaver, HTML editor, baby blue homepage. So I watched this thing happen to them, which I can only describe as like, Cribs or MTV Real World or something. Like they were living in this like crazy reality.
So you watch this thing just blow up right in front of you.
Like
become this huge phenomenon.
And it started as them working in this, we had this really cool loft apartment in Tribeca. It started as them working in there, and like these people they were working with were like so much younger and cooler than the people that I was working with. And then they got this like really cool place in Union Square, which was like, it just looked like a dream, this life. And in many ways it was. Yeah. And I just wanted to do that. So with no, it's so like, I can't believe that I made it, because what I thought when I start, it's just like, I'm going to go do that. What does it even mean? I don't know. Well, I'm going to just take a year and just start talking to everyone that I know in tech.
Yeah,
so that's what I did for you.
You talked about too, like for you read the book. You made a comment to me that like during those 10 years you didn't realize it, but until you read this book by Tony. What was Tony Hsieh's the book?
Yeah,
the book?
It's called Delivering Happiness.
That
was a transformational moment in this whole thing.
I was going to say, how did you go from like before you just jumped to the next thing? What was it about that book that made you say, I want to do something not just entrepreneurial, but something with purpose as well? What happened when you read the book?
Yeah, so going back to this value system I was a part of, like it's crazy to say this now, but like I did not understand why anyone would work for any other reason than to make as much money as they possibly could. I just didn't know any better. Everybody that I knew, even these tech guys, were kind of like on that path because of how successful they were.
And you were saying when you were at Lehman and then Barclays, like that's just the way it is. Like, you made a comment to me. You said, if it wasn't for the money, those people would not be there.
Oh yeah. Every single person in the building, you could have given them a check and they would have just, a lot of them would be a big check, but like the only reason they were there is to like work towards this, thing for the money, basically. So I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and then I was like, well, I don't know anything about it. So I just started reading books. And somebody recommended this Delivering Happiness book to me. And I read it, and it was like completely life-changing. I was sitting there reading it, and I just could not understand, A, why these people were going to work in the first place, and B, the fact that they thought they were like saving the world and they were selling shoes. It was just such a disconnect from me. It's like, how do they not know they're just selling shoes? Like, what is this guy doing to these people to make them feel that way? And I remember after reading that book, I reached out to two people. One person was an ex that I had where we broke up for this reason. Like she was like working her ass off at this digital advertising firm. And her boss, basically couldn't even afford to live in Manhattan on his own. I'm just like, why are you doing this? The path to, you're working nights and weekends. Like I don't even see you. You're working more than I am. And like, where is this going for you? Didn't get it at all. I had another buddy who, after he graduated from Tulane, he enlisted in the military and like became a Green Beret and like did that whole thing for like literally 20 years. So I hit both of them up and I'm like, why do you guys go to work every day? And it was a genuine question. Yeah. And my ex didn't respond, which fair enough. We basically broke up for that reason because I couldn't get my head around why she was doing what she was doing. Wow. And it was crazy. I mean, she was working like literally the whole week, it just didn't make sense.
A lot of people do it.
Yeah,
a lot of people do it.
But the guy, the military guy, he had a way of saying it, which, the answer was basically like, his answer was it boils down to purpose, but he was like, dude, at the end of the day, it's like all about the guy next to you. Like it has nothing to do with anything other than just like this all encompassing purpose of keeping everybody getting out of there with no one dying. That is all you care about.
Your brother. Something very community.
Exactly.
One of the pillars of four-dimensional wealth. This community was so important at that point.
Yeah.
Taking care of like that person next to you is more important than yourself. At that
100%.
Yeah.
And then that book kicked off this what could only be described as like a spiritual exploration. I started just like reading stuff that Tony Hsieh was interested in, and then all of the authors that were inspired by other works in their books. It just like led to this whole thing.
Mackey's Conscious Capitalism.
Yeah,
a
lot of like Buddhism stuff,
Yeah.
and I eventually realized that people are actually more motivated by things than money. Which was just the craziest thing. When you see the world in this other way, it's like, wow, like so it became, from second one, when I started my first company, it was like, I want to make this a place where, wouldn't it be amazing if everybody woke up every day and they like putting their clothes on, and just like, I can't wait to like get there and like get after it with those people today.
Yeah.
So that part of it became super important from day one. And, I think if you were to like ask, so you get bad apples or whatever, but like most of the people that have worked at, companies which me and my co-founders have started, they articulate back to us that they feel that way, which is like so amazing, because it was the opposite of the environment I was previously in, when financially those people are actually doing a lot better.
It's an interesting point. They might have even been making more money at the Wall Street type of companies, but you're getting better retention and more happiness when people think they're coming in and they're working for a purpose and a greater purpose in an environment that really supports that kind of greater purpose than just making money as a commodity like you would do.
Yeah, and they feel their value as something that's, their contribution, and they're moving this thing forward, and they're around team members that they respect, and they think they're, I think there's like huge intrinsic satisfaction in just living in excellence, and just like constantly just like slowly raising this bar of what we're doing, and just infecting people with that. All of that, right? Like none of that was like a part of, if you had made more money doing stuff not excellently, you would have done that. Like I think the best people were excellent, but like there was not an intrinsic craft at all in that.
What do you think for you after reading all the spiritual books? And like, I actually got to meet Tony, which was super, super cool. And he inspired me as well. Mm-hmm. But what do you think changed in you to be able to open your eyes and see that? Like, what was it that like changed in you spiritually? Was it a purpose-driven thing? Was it a why? Was it a vision of where you want your life to go? I know it's still a work in progress for you, but do you have some sense of why that? Because a lot of people could read those books and they would go right back to the Wall Street job. It wouldn't hit them or penetrate them at such a deep level that it did for you. I'm just wondering, what do you think it was for you, or that you heard or saw or felt?
Yeah. So, we all have our different spiritual or religious or whatever upbringing. I happen to have been raised in like a Methodist, a Christian house, and there were some big problems I had with it, and I just thought this like kind of emotional self-regulation and reflection aspects of Buddhism were so fascinating. Like there was actually like, it was about observing emotional states and like having empathy for other people and creating those emotional states in other people. That whole, I was just fascinated by it. And I think a lot of people are who like, the Christianity that I was brought up with just had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I think some of that could be a byproduct of like living a good life, but it was not, it was just not, that was not even a part of it.
Right. I really hear you say it's like really truly have a true feeling of empathy, not a thought of empathy, but this true empathy for your fellow human, that we're actually all here on the same team, swimming in the same direction for a greater purpose, hopefully. And
then I was really interested in this happiness research, the whole hedonic treadmill thing, which like, that's like just the classic loop that a Wall Streeter is in. It's like, oh, I have $1 million. If I had 5, all my problems would be solved. And like, you either don't get it or you do get it. And then 90 days later, you're totally used to this 5 million. You're like, well, I need 20, I was very interested in, just couldn't get enough of this research about how, being sort of like maximally purpose-driven, engaged in something is like across the board the most satisfied people in the world.
Yep.
And if you can position yourself in a way to where your life is that, and you're just sort of giving, and this is my interpretation, success and happiness will ensue, right? And it's just like it's not a fixed thing. It's like while you are on the journey, it is happening to you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the more you try to chase it, as you say, the hedonic treadmill, the more, I know in my 20s, the more you try to chase it through goals, it is so elusive. And it's actually when you're not chasing it and you get out of your own way. And when it's no longer about, for me, when it was no longer about me and for something greater, bigger than me, happiness started to find me rather than me having to like pursue it. I don't know if that was the same experience for you.
Yeah.
But that was mine.
I mean, I think you said what I said just in a more elegant way.
I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. So that's amazing. So you start your company, and you have this in mind. I want to start something that's going to be a force for good. And then how did you get into? If I remember, you said it was like the MailChimp. It was one of the early MailChimps is where you started.
Long story short, my co-founders and I were just trying to figure out what to do, and my brother texted me one day. He's like, there's this company that I was using for customer reviews and email marketing, and they said they're going to shut their doors in 7 days. Maybe you should try to go get all their old customers. So like that was like kind of where it started. I was working on several other things at the time, which all were complete failures. I mean, this one probably should have been also. But the only reason that it was not, and this was just a stroke of luck, I was reading everything under the sun. I like read some books about content marketing of all things. And it's ironic because we'll probably come back to this later in this episode. And that is what we're doing right now in many ways. But, you read a business book, and, it's kind of like never show up to the barber wondering if you need a haircut. It's like their prescription for any problem you have is like what is in that book. So I was like, I need to make, a video, and I'll put it on YouTube, and then my business will be worth $1 billion. Like that's basically what, so I got, these 3 videos made, and like somehow one of these videos made its way to the founder of the company that shut down.
Wow.
You
posted it on the social media.
Yeah, I put
LinkedIn?
it on like YouTube, and 100 people watched it, and like I guess one of them was somebody who used to work with him. So he actually hit me up, and he was like, "Hey man, if you try to do what you're going to try to do, you will fail for sure. But like I can show you a way to like this will work to a small scale for sure, because it's something I figured out, and I figured it out too late." So I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Come to Boston. I'll like give you the whole rundown." So we get there, and this guy's like, "Okay, here's the story. I had this vision with customer reviews that like did not work at all. But then really late in the game, after we raised way too much money, we figured out that Constant Contact, this email newsletter app down the street from us, was like leaving this like trail of information all over the internet. And we could basically like scrape their sign up widgets, outbound their customers, and get them to switch over because their product kind of sucked." So he's like, "I figured it out way too late. They're a huge company. There's at least a small positive cash flow business there, and that's what you should do. I'm not going to tell you too much more because my co-founder's starting a data company, but just go look." So like we go out there and look, and somehow my co-founder figures out that they're in like, by the way, the CEO didn't even figure this out. They were creating a community page for all of their paying customers as just part of the sign up flow. And it had the first name and the last name, the business name, and the zip code of every one of their paying customers. But here's the kicker. In the URL, there was a 6-digit unencrypted number that if you raised by 1, it was a dead page. And if you raised it by 2, it was the next customer. So that was their attempt. That was their attempt to hide security. It. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So like we built this like crawler, and over like 6 months, we just on a bunch of Tor IPs anonymously, like we just hit these pages and downloaded a bunch 250,000 of their paying customers. And then like I sent the spreadsheet to Bangladesh and had them like, go to Google and type in these businesses and get their, and this is Main Street companies, right? It's like, Joe's Coffee Shop and wherever. So they all have phone numbers. They all pick up their phones. So got this 250,000 customer list, built a little call center in my apartment, and that was 3 million ARR. But like,
wow.
Yeah.
Over what period of time?
Over probably, so like it took it's just when you're a first time software guy, I had no prior product experience. I had no prior startup experience. It just, you do all the wrong things your first time.
Yeah.
You build way too much product. You're copying people. Like it's just, it was horrible. But January 2014, we launched the product and got our first paying customer. And then by about 2016, so 2 years later, we'd burnt through that entire list. We were at 3 million ARR. But we couldn't do anything else to grow it because MailChimp was pulling this, like, I don't know if probably everyone knows about that company. It was the most prolific and incredible execution ever. They made a free product that people didn't think could be free. No one took them seriously until it was way too late, and they had like way too much market share.
Yeah.
And it was just, there was nothing we could do there's nothing I could come up with to compete with that. It's like, what do? Be more free? It's like, there was this horrible moment when I was sitting on my brother's couch over Thanksgiving in 2016. I'm like, I got to figure out, I'm like watching courses on marketing on digitalmarketer.com because I'm like, I need marketing because my sales doesn't work anymore. And then this guy, Ryan Dice, is like, he brings up this yellow card, statement of value, right? It's basically like, company X helps users Y achieve outcome Z better than, whatever.
Right.
And like, I could not write anything on this. And he's like, until you can fill this card out, don't do anything else because it's not going to work. If you can't articulate your basic statement of value versus people's alternatives, no marketing you do is going to work. So like,
it's so simple, but so true.
It is. It is. And like literally, there's just my stomach, I got nauseous because I'm just like, I'm screwed. Like, like if our customers knew that MailChimp existed, they would not be using our product because they're better than our product and they're free, and that started this horrible 3 years of just like trying to figure out what MailChimp is not doing that we could do. And I made some huge swings and failed, year after year. And then finally I came upon the thing that eventually became retention.com, which has been a great success by most people's
How did you come up with the great
standard? So like, this is a funny story. So a couple things that I tried that didn't work was I tried to, so Constant Contact, who we'd been stealing customers from, got acquired. And they had invested in this authorized local expert network. So it was boots on the ground people selling software for them. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. I don't love it, but it's definitely not what MailChimp's doing. They're doing exactly the opposite. And the guy who's running that, after they got acquired and they cut that, he reached out to me. He's like, yo, we invested $50 million into this group of people who's out there selling this. Like, they just got cut. Like, you should try to pick them up. So I was like, okay, I tried to. Hired this guy, did big road show, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to herd cats and get this thing going. And then, way late in the game, I realized that was a branding effort for $1 billion company, and it really worked for that purpose. But like, from a unit economic standpoint that a early stage startup needs, like it just didn't work. It didn't even close to work. So realized that too late. And then, to add insult to injury, Constant Contact sued me.
Right.
And the guy. And he's like, oh, I'm in California, non-competes aren't enforceable here. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Right. Like they'll sue you anyway.
Right.
Like these people hated me because I was torturing them with this call center.
Right.
And they were dying to have that happen. So like, yeah, that was another, not nearly as low as my identity crisis moment when I moved back from London and got fired and broken up with and was completely lost before I started my startup. But like, I had a broken leg from skiing. I was single in my late 30s. Like, this business had been stuck for 2 years. Like, it was like kind of shrinking at 0.5% per month. It's not a...
That doesn't sound like it really was filling your purpose. You open up the
this
books.
was survival.
This was survival.
Yeah,
You're not like,
exactly.
You're not, totally.
This was like, I wanted my employees to feel good, but it's like, man, like this is not, it's like, you're either growing or you're dying in tech, right? So I needed to solve that problem badly. And then I made another sort of similarly flop attempt. And there was this, I was going, I mean, if there's earlier stage people listening to this, I'm sure you're in this situation. I go to these events and I listen to people like me now talk about what was working for them. And then I go try it and it never worked. And like, I listened to this one speech from this woman who worked for a company in the email space. And I always tried to talk to people in the email space because they always thought they had answers that I didn't. When in reality, they don't. It's all inside it, right? It's like, my problem was I didn't have a good enough product and nobody was going to help me with that but me.
That's a really important thing to realize that though.
It took me a very long time.
How many of us fall in love with our product? And to your point with Ryan Dice's thing, we fall in love with a product that simply just isn't the best in the market. And it's a product or a service. And the more time you invest in it, just like a bad relationship, it's like harder to get out of it. But on some levels, when you look back, you're like, oh, now I know why that didn't work.
Right. And the tricky thing about products like that, you said, a product can be good and customers can be really happy with it. But if someone out there is just way better than you, you're screwed. And that was like the mixed message I was getting from this. I'm
Absolutely.
Like, man, I ask our customers about this thing and they love it. But like, I can't acquire a customer on any channel outside of that first one, because MailChimp just had it all.
And things change so fast these days. I think with disruption these days too, again, you fall in love with something that worked a couple of years ago. Even in the real estate business, as we're going through a transactional cycle right now, I cannot rest on the laurels of the first cycle and assume it's going to work in the second cycle.
Right.
New technology, new players, new economics. And if you get lazy, you're host. It's like you always have to have that discipline.
Yeah. So the thing that sort of got me thinking in this new way, it was around the time, this might have been, the Ryan Dice thing made me realize my product wasn't good enough. But then like all of the plans that I had, when I looked at it through this lens, they were terrible. So this woman's like, I'm telling her my horrible plan, whatever it is, for like growing this email tool. And she's like, you know what I would do if I were you? I'd try to solve a problem in email that has not been solved yet. And I was like, oh, like I never thought about it like that. And then I was like, man, yeah, that probably would be a lot easier if I was selling something that like the average Joe in email heard and they were like, oh, I have that problem. I'm listening. Whereas like what I was trying to sell was like, I'm like slightly better, but probably not really than like your new, you
were kind of with the competition, just another person as
behind
opposed to
the competition,
right, rather than innovating.
Yeah, exactly. And then so that started this whole new way of thinking. And then I heard very soon after that it was possible to take an anonymous website visitor and resolve it to an email address without them filling out a form. And I was like, man, if I could figure out do that, I know people's email lists, the email list shrinking is like the biggest problem. If I could figure that out, I would be able to sell it to anybody. And it took about 1.5 years. Finally, we sort of figured out the technical way to do this. And that is now what retention.com is. It started off as a feature in that email app, but everybody loved the feature and no one would use the rest of the email app. So we spun it out and connected it to everything. And it like was amazing. Was a rock ship from day one.
Which is incredible. It's just absolute. Congratulations, by the way, too. So what did you learn like from that journey to like where, again, you got 0 to 25 million? What did you, it sounds like you learned a couple things that I heard you say is that, well, first of all, it's hard to innovate sometimes when you're in survival mode. But even beyond just the finances of it, it's kind of like, it almost took a couple of like that. It took you grinding to realize that just having a product that didn't do much more than, or maybe is quite not even as good as another competitor's, will not work, or if it works, it's just not going to be big enough to ever make anything. But you kind of had to go through that experience to get you to the aha moment, which was a question of, can I come up with a new service with an email, something, an expertise that I know that's not out there that's truly needed by the marketplace? That's what I heard you say.
1,000,000%. And I think the biggest lesson for me, and I would, from that story, I'm sure you'll appreciate, I've been on either side of this product market fit paradigm for many years, right? I spent many years on the bad side of it. And now it's been good for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. You need, and I think this is beyond software. You need a product that is so good that people are talking to, word of mouth, right? You need, what you are building your life around needs to be good enough to have word of mouth. And if you have that, then everything you do works. And it's just a matter of like trying to like pick the lowest hanging fruit. If you do not have that, nothing you do will work. And it will be this eternal grind of like pushing this massive snowball uphill, and it will never, you'll never actually reach the peak.
At lunch we talked about, I think I love the word entrepreneur, but sometimes it's so overused. Like everyone thinks they're an entrepreneur. What I hear you saying is somewhat of an artist. It's like, it's not just like, here's an idea from ChatGPT, I'm going to copy and paste it and make it 10% better. But what you're talking about is truly being the creator, the artist of something different that's really going to serve people, but in a really creative way that's yours. That's kind of what I hear you saying, and it's interesting.
I mean, I think people who get things to work are that.
Artists, creatives. I know we love the word entrepreneur, but it's really like, it is a creative. And it's hard work, and it's usually like thankless. And most people fail. It's really, really, I've failed so many times.
Hey, so I've been telling you all my failures.
Yeah. So what was it? So obviously the company grows. You were telling me like, you've now created a podcast. I think it's called Unfuck Your Business.
Unfuck Your Startup.
Oh, Unfuck Your
Yeah, I love marketing that's just like very loud. I love it. I just think it's like you break through. And
so you've created this podcast, Unfuck Your Startup. You have this incredibly large LinkedIn following. How do we find you on LinkedIn, by the way?
Adam Rob, just type in Adam Robinson. It'll bring me up.
And I was going through it just at lunch today, and obviously you're helping a lot. A lot of people are asking you for advice. You have people pitching ideas. You're kind of like a little startup lab where you're bringing in experts in yourself to help people resolve startup issues. Is that a connection? Is that kind of like full circle for you for the pain that you felt and kind of doing circles? Are you trying to save other people from that pain, or what inspired you to do that?
So like, yeah, I mean, there's nothing else I can say other than yes. Like the pain that I felt through that agonizing period. And by the way, I just want to say, it's so hard because I think the painful experience is so necessary. It's like the hard lessons of life are what get you to just raise your standards high enough to really so if you asked me what I would do differently for my first startup, knowing what I know today, right? It's like you're in the same opportunity. You figure this thing out about Constant Contact. What would you do differently? I wouldn't do it. Because it's not up to my standard of an opportunity worth pursuing. Like I would already know that would lead to this agonizing stalemate that I was in because it doesn't have that magic of like solve a problem that hasn't been solved yet. It's like that was a very narrow, I would be able to identify that acquisition channel was very narrow, and there would be no way that I would ever catch up to MailChimp. I would immediately have seen that and not pursued the opportunity.
Makes a lot of sense. On a small tangent too, I think about this. When people talk about like AI replacing human workforce and what have you, I actually think what you're talking about, this creativity, is going to take a premium. Because so many people now can go to artificial intelligence and create companies like you can mimic. It's like mimicking what's out there.
Yep.
But I think the difference between artificial intelligence and human intelligence is going to be that spark, and getting the entrepreneurs that I believe will be successful in the future are going to even have to have more of what you're talking about, more artistry, more creativity, because you've got more collective intelligence giving you lots of ideas. So how are you going to outwit that intelligence? And I'd still say, even with singularity, there's something about human beings with our divine creative spark that's human to human. So if you can hit a connection where a human's like, God, I really recognize that problem, and they can feel you or they feel your story, I think human intelligence will have a premium in the next 20 years. It's going to be harder, but we'll have a premium, whether it's being an artist, a poet, or a creative entrepreneur. I think there'll be a premium for beautiful, creative human work.
I agree with you. You know, the software landscape's pretty scary, right? Because it's like, what is my SaaS worth if you can build my SaaS in 1 hour,
right?
You know, without being an engineer,
right,
which is an inevitability.
Right.
You know, you will be able to give an AI a website and be like, just build all this for me. So it's like, then what are we doing? I don't know. I think it's exactly what you said. I'm really excited about honing my storytelling ability in sort of injecting my human experience into that and injecting lessons that I've learned so that other people can learn them, and like trying to really articulate, you know, emotional pain that I've had as a result of mistakes that I've made, and injecting that pain into people so that they don't have to live it. And hopefully, you know, they can skip some of the pain that I've had. And like, what is the result? I don't think an AI can do that, you know, because it's like, what's valuable there? It's like, my perspective is what's valuable, you know?
In real estate, by the way, no matter how good it gets, you think about, at the end of the day in my business, I'm aggregating investors who are looking for a return with good risk-adjusted returns in commercial real estate. Pretty simple transaction. And we all know the internet is great at being efficient with that. AI will make it more efficient. I can only tell you, after 20 plus years of walking properties and thousands of deals, there's a lot of gut instinct in what I do. There's a lot of spreadsheet, there's a lot of analysis, but there's a feel when you interview a manager at an apartment project and you're trying to figure out what's really wrong with this project. There's a certain set of questions you need to ask in a certain set of way, at a certain pace, at a certain tempo that I can't replicate, because it depends on when I'm looking in the eyes of that person,
right? What
vibe are they giving me? And then I have to kind of like match their energy so that I can get some authenticity to help me make some good decision-based things. Yeah. But that all comes in the energy of, I call this, by the way, Adam, I call this DI, which is divine intelligence. Mm-hmm. So AI or I is just intelligence. It's collective human intelligence. It's the GPTs. Human intelligence is your brain. It's your intelligence. And then DI is your divine intelligence. It's that mystic spark.
Yeah.
And then so humans have and I think the more and more we start to recognize these different kinds of intelligences, and they're all great and they're all super important. And we are all using this new intelligence, and it can help us write a paper faster, a legal document. But if we know what the value of each intelligence, and we all recognize our HI and our DI, I think that's what you're talking about. I think that's where you succeed, not just in your business, but I think as a human. I think that's where success comes from. It's that connection, that human-to-human connection. So I want to ask you, you said at lunch, like, you're getting so much joy. You said, what do you think one of your secrets, I know you have like over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn on some of your things.
LinkedIn's got small audiences, so I'm proud about that.
But so 100,000 might be like a couple million.
Actually,
So, but you said something. You said, one of the secrets to my success, you believe, of why you have such a loyal finding, is that the way you do your postings is like an artist. You're not just some guy on ChatGPT doing a post. You take time. You think about how to create value, how to be, I think you said, authentic, to be the most authentic. And you said the difference is if there's a guy next to you trying to replicate you and do the same thing, which is ironic, because there are now people trying to copy your success.
For sure.
The reason why you're succeeding and maybe they're not, as you said, is because it's that radical authenticity and your ability not just to regurgitate the information, but to tell it in a story that people can resonate to, which is your HI and your DI, by the way. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
I think you just nailed it.
Yeah, right?
I think, all social media, but LinkedIn in particular, this idea sounds so simple, and, be authentic, right? Like, be the most human version of yourself. It's like nodding. Yes. Okay. Easy. But that's really hard for people to do on this platform where, every profile you're looking at is actually not an authentic version of someone. I call it the envy machine, right? It's like, people trying to present themselves as, the most perfect, with the perfect life and the perfect everything else. And LinkedIn's a professional platform, so everyone's trying to be smart and successful and, never made a bad trade and like all this stuff. So that combined with, I shared an office with Jasper AI and just watched this AI thing in its very first mass market rollout, which I think that they kind of were. I was just like, man, this is going to create a flood of sameness. And somebody said B- crap, right? So like, how can I be like the most human person on social media possible, right? So how do you do that? Like I do a lot of me talking, right? Like video. I write every single word of my posts. I leave some typos in there, you know? I talk about, you know, I'm the CEO of a growth stage startup. Like I talk about bad stuff in my business all the time, which I've still never seen anyone besides like a press release talking about layoffs, but in a positive light. I've never seen anyone anywhere close to where my startup is say a single bad thing about their business. You know, like I just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
you know, one thing I'm just as a confessional from my side, because you said this, you know, I try to be vulnerable, but I just know that there is a certain filter in my head that when you have stakeholders like shareholders or investors, sometimes your gross vulnerability could freak them out.
totally.
If you're telling them you're having a really hard time, or you're really afraid of something, and so I respect you, the fact that you are that vulnerable. I also really acknowledge that because I know you've built this company without investors. It's your company. There's got to be some freedom to it, but I also just really respect and acknowledge the difference, because even me, who tries to be as authentic as I can, there's a little filters like, what if your banker's watching this? Yeah. What if your investor's watching this and they think you're falling apart? Yeah. God forbid. Yeah. So I actually have a lot of empathy for the people. I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Yes. And I feel empathy because I actually see it in me sometimes where I'd like to go a little further and I find myself filtering myself a little bit. So I acknowledge you for that.
Well, by the way, like I don't think that this is revelatory or that I'm a genius or that I even have to try hard in any way that other people are not doing. I think I'm in a unique situation to where I can.
Yeah, I think that's
you know
right.
What I mean?
That's kind of what I'm saying.
So it's like, and I acknowledge that, and you know, I'm smiling ear to ear because of it. Like it's just, I think it's like a protected, you know, it's like a protected media brand for me. It's just like, no one can put out my story, which is one part of it, but no one can tell it with as much up and down. No one can tell their version with as much up and down, which is like, you know, it's kind of like what people are tuned in for if you treat it as this ongoing drama.
So let me ask you, on your podcast, you've heard lots of people in the Shark Tank format pitch to you, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of bad ideas, because I judge a lot of startups at UT, and I've been through that thing. Yeah. What do you think? I don't know if this is a kind of a hard question, but like, what do you think if you could give someone advice and you kind of see them struggling, you see them in the reflection of you, the someone that they really want to make it, they're struggling, they just can't seem to break the breakthrough. I mean, there probably isn't a standard answer for that, but like when you're judging these things, how do you communicate? What do you communicate, and how do you communicate to someone that you see as maybe not seeing the whole picture, I guess is what I'm saying.
So I think there's two main problems that I see in very early stage people almost universally. One is they are stuck at some very early revenue level and they're watching a bunch of content about how to grow their business. And the content is from people like me talking about what's working for me. Mm-hmm. So then they go try to do it and they don't have this product market fit yet. And they've put the cart before the horse. They're trying to do, you know, cold email and ads and stuff. And like me with my statement of value, they can't even clearly articulate what they are and for who, right? So there's just...
You can't emphasize that statement of value. I've heard it, but I really heard it from you today.
Yeah.
What's the point of doing all these other things if you don't have your product or service
because it doesn't
locked
make sense.
in? Yeah.
So everything that they're spending money on and everything that they're doing, and then just really try to get in what I call like a customer discovery loop. So like have this hypothesis of what you are building or going to build, have this other hypothesis of who this is for, and then do whatever you can to get in front of them and really refine that elevator pitch, that one sentence pitch, so that it's compelling enough to where they'll talk to you more, and then have something else you can tell them that's compelling enough to where they'll actually give you the time of the day, try your product, even if for free, and give you some feedback. That's all you should be doing until you are getting referrals you're not asking for, in my opinion. You know, and like, it's manual. You know, it's not a blast. It's like, go to a real live event and like figure out who you want to talk to and show them a diagram of what you're trying to get, you know, you're trying to make, and will you buy this or not? Yeah. Like, that is how horrible it is. And
by the way, to ask the questions in a way that aren't biased, because some people feel bad for you. Problems. So if you don't even get your questions like framed right, like I always say to you, like, tell me 3 things I can learn to be. I might even ask you at the end of this podcast when you listen to it, like, tell me what you liked about the podcast, and tell me 3 things, you know, I would love your feedback. Like, tell me where you think I can improve. Like, I do that a lot, because if you don't invite that part of the conversation, everyone's, oh, it was great, it was great, it was great. You really, to learn, you gotta invite someone to say, I'm open to true feedback. And then you gotta be strong enough to take it.
Totally. All of that is very difficult.
It is hard.
People want to be nice to you. Like, asking this stuff in a way to where they will be honest is very hard. So that's one problem. Another problem is like slightly farther along than that. Somebody has a business where it's chugging along, but it's basically got them in this oppressed life state.
Yeah.
You know? But it's
oppressed because it's not making enough money, oppressed because it just won't grow, it's stagnant.
It's stagnant, and it's not making enough money. And like, maybe like to try to grow it more, like they'd have to stop paying themselves. And like, you know, it's just,
I've seen that many times.
It just sucks. Right. Yeah. And to those people, I try to be as direct as possible. I truly believe I try to tell my story and have them connect to it. I'm like, look, I was in a similar state. I felt exactly how you felt. Literally what you just told me. Like, I tried my Google ads and they didn't work. You know, I tried my affiliate thing and it didn't work, or whatever. Like I was doing all of that. And what solved it for me was when I found an adjacency, which was effectively a totally different thing that was a problem that had not been solved yet. These Proof guys, these Jasper guys who I shared the office with, they had this company called Proof. Same deal, stuck at $2.5 million. They had an office full of people, came out of Y Combinator, they were burning through all this venture dough. They made a big bet, it failed. And then this Jasper AI thing was totally different. They got to wrap the GPT-3 or whatever. And they were the only people who OpenAI was letting sell that for the first 9 months. And like,
remind me what Jasper does.
Sorry, Jasper is not only just that filter right there.
Yeah.
Jasper AI was ChatGPT before OpenAI launched ChatGPT.
Got it.
So I was sharing an office with these guys, and they got from OpenAI, because of Y Combinator, they got basically the exclusive rights for a year to sell the blogger use case. And then on a year plus 1 day, OpenAI put out ChatGPT and it got smoked. But they went 0 to 50 million ARR with 8 people sitting in this office in 12 months. Wow. It was crazy to watch.
Wow.
And basically everybody in my world knows the company because you know it is one of these intergalactic successes. So
what happened? Are they still around?
So the founders are gone. They took a bunch of secondary, which was beautiful.
Right.
And then, you know,
ChatGPT took over, I imagine, right?
So they still sell to enterprise because ChatGPT is not a great, you know, there's security stuff and team stuff that it doesn't really do that well. But it's nothing like the excitement that it was at that time.
But tell me more.
But the crazy thing is, I shared an office with them for 2 years before that, when all of these same frustrations we were both feeling, right? Stuck. So I'll first tell this person who is stuck, but like farther along than they have something, but it's just not good enough, really. I'll tell them my story and I'll be like, that's what got me out of it, right? And then I'll tell them Dave's story, who's the CEO of Proof and then Jasper. And it's like, what got him out of it was the same thing. It was not adding a few features to this, or like, this is not working at all. All of a sudden, Facebook ads make it work.
Right.
It's like a totally different thing. And that can be intimidating because it feels like, oh my gosh, I spent years doing this, so I'm going to have to spend years building something else. But a lot of times these things, the V1 of them, it's not a lot of features. It's just the right combination of things for the right people. And it takes off from second one. And that was his experience, and that was my experience. And that's what, to those types of people, that's what I try to relay without directly telling them that you need to stop, you need to stop what you're doing and do something else.
You have
Like,
to have
not really.
the courage and the willingness and the vulnerability to pivot. And sometimes
Be open
pivot,
to it at
be
least.
open to it.
Have some wild experiments going on that could be your pivot, but acknowledge that this is probably not going to be what you want it to be.
And by the way, for all of us, including you and including me, just as disruption's getting faster and faster, this notion that you're talking about is not only for a startup. I'm very aware today that in the next cycle of real estate, there are some young people smarter, more ambitious than me that are going to try to come up with another angle. And you can't. So I'm going to I have to literally take my brand and what I've created and be ready to morph into anything I need to morph in to continue to create value for my investors. Part of that is community for me because, community and purpose are a big pillar for me. So part of it is how do you actually create community and purpose, but make it accretive to someone's investment, which is why we're Thrive FP, for purpose, for profit. I have it right in the name. So literally, how do we create more unique resident programs that when the residents get better programs, you have higher resident retention, and higher resident retention is less turnover. Less turnover creates happier investors, but it all starts from actually being trying to be the most progressive out of anyone out there on resident programs that get residents to stay and refer other people to us.
I love that.
And that's now for me.
Yeah.
That can be disruptive. Right now, I can tell you my industry is so far behind in how it takes care of residences that I think I've got this for a while. But then I will be disrupted at a certain point. Everyone, I'll know I won when I see everyone doing the same programs like free telemedicine to their residents and doing those things, then I'll know. And that's actually, for me, will feel good.
Right.
Because as you know, being copied is a great source of flattery. It means you had some form of success. And then I'm going to have to reinvent myself again. And it's scary. But as I say this to you, I feel very vulnerable saying this to you because in a way, it makes me feel really insecure. It's like you can't rest on your laurels. And yet it's your brilliance of being that artist. And you just ask me on any certain day, on any day like tomorrow, it might be my greatest strength, feeling the energy of that 28-year-old who started this thing, just doing it in a new way. Like, how cool. And then there's days where you're just like, this is just overwhelming. Today, to be honest, is an overwhelming day. I was hit this morning with 3 big problems in a row.
Yeah.
So today was just like, oh my God, it's Friday and there's 3 big problems in a row. So.
and I think this is like my experience as an entrepreneur has been getting stuck and unstuck. And just each time it's just like a little higher and a little higher. And a little higher.
I love that idea of getting stuck and unstuck. That's really a great way to say, hey guys, there's no finish line here. Right. You don't get somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I talk about in my 4-dimensional wealth. There is no net worth that makes you feel safe. It is a state of mind. It is a constant push-pull and it is an art.
Yeah.
The only thing I can tell you as I've gotten older is I find more days in joy and purpose and safety. But that's taken years of a practice,
right,
to get to that point. Also,
and
years of solving problems.
In your external circumstances have provided, it could all be gone in a second, but not, it's
for sure.
It's all of it.
It's all of it. I talk a lot about with 4-dimensional wealth and this idea of creating a structure that once you start to earn money to make sure that you know your number, you feel fulfilled in your number, but you also create structures around asset protection, your estate planning, all the other pillars of money. Because guess what? There's always ebb and flow. These are all cycles. These are all business cycles. And you have to just kind of if you want to feel safe and sleep well at night, you have to create certain structures to do that. And I've seen so many entrepreneurs do this and then do this because they either were too cocky that it would never end. They didn't think it would end so bad. They didn't think the economy would get so, whatever the story was, I almost did this or I just didn't do it right. Yeah. And then they're starting over. And that's really hard.
Yes.
It's really hard. So I have to ask you a question. So it was interesting when I interviewed John Mackey last week and then our friend Brett. Out of all my 70 episodes in your episode 71, They were the only two people who talked about as entrepreneurs. They said, what is the source of your success? And they both said love. And I thought that was a really interesting idea that John was saying that Whole Foods was born out of love. And even during the most aggressive times when the shareholders and the equity providers were trying to crush him and knock him out and take over the company, even with all that, he somehow managed to find his way and navigate back to love. Brett says the reason why his companies keep winding up as the best places to work is because he has such a gratitude for his team and the love that he can give. Very much what you were saying to me earlier, the love. He's at the point of his career journey that love is so strong for his team. And he's created such a gratitude, a genuine, not like a gratitude, but like a gratitude, energetic gratitude that he creates people. And it's also Brett. So you've got a jockey that wins, but the jockey only wins with a team that supports you. And Brett would even say it's not the jockey. I disagree, but it's the jockey, it's the team. And so Brett always goes back to the team. And so does John Mackey, by the way. So for you, 5 years into this huge success, I imagine you're going to continue doing this. Your podcast is going to grow. Everything's going to grow.
I hope so.
Going back to the kid on the beach who was reading the book, like, where do you hope or where can you see your own purpose? Like, what would you say as you have many employees and you have to make these decisions outside of the money ARR of where you want to grow this to? Where do you have a sense spiritually or purpose driven that you'd like to see your career and your company grow?
Yeah. So, I really, for example, my co-founder, Diana, who started retention.com with me 5 years ago, she'd just been an employee before that. Like, not only does she absolutely love what we're doing, like, she's going to get rich from this. It's happening in real time. It's like, that's such an amazing, she's bought a ski house. Like, that's just like so awesome.
It's awesome.
It's like,
it's great
as a result
to watch people.
Of like in every, like, I don't tell her enough, but I tell her all the time. It's like, there's nobody I would rather go into battle with than you. Right. And she's just like, I feel as way. It's just such an incredible, and we have this dynamic across our 6-person executive team. Like, it's just this unbelievable level of trust and fulfillment and satisfaction. And I would be more shocked if I dropped dead tomorrow than if one of these people were like, I'm done with this, right? Like, it's just this really beautiful thing in our life, which is like, that alone is incredible. I'm the closest to them, but like a lot of their teams, feel the same way too. I
totally get that. But my partner and I have been together for 15 years. And he even said to me today, where we had a call about these 3 problems this morning. I called him. I wasn't really in the best mood. And he's like, just remember, it's you and me always get this. This is just what we do. And that's 15 years of working it together. So I totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. So I love that part of it. It's just, I'm going back to the Lehman Brothers thing. Like, that place wasn't this, right? And like, somehow we've created this thing over time that is that for people. It's like, I think it gives me so much to take to my family and my kids. Like, I know it does. It gives me an incredible amount of positive energy to go back to my own family with. She's the same way. And then
I'm going to ask you a question about that, though. I'm going to stop you. You said it and positive energy. That's how you've described it so far. What do you think the it is? If you were to give it a name, a label it an emotion, what is it that you're bringing back to your family after a good day? What is it that you're bringing back? What are you embodying?
I mean, I think the love that they describe when they say that is the it. I just, in my personal experience, had not articulated it that way, but it is that. I mean, for sure. It's just this. It's like a lot of the pillars you talk about kind of all in one.
It's great. That's awesome.
It's like and that's just part of it. And then there's this bigger picture, that my content brand has turned into this. I just view it as I'm serving the ecosystem through this, through these lessons and stories. And like, I want to like become a better storyteller, to make the content better, to teach better lessons, to reach more people, because that's just the way it works. And I find a tremendous amount of satisfaction from people walking up to me at events who I don't know saying, I read every single one of your posts. It's the most impactful thing to me. You helped me so much on my journey. And it's just like, I'm just sitting there doing it. It was to market my business, but like now, there's something so much higher behind it that it is very easy to put ever more, energy and creativity into it. And that's like beyond, these are people that to me, they're just numbers and avatars, but still like, I just get every day somebody telling me that it's helping them. And it's tremendously,
it's great. We call that, I've now called that being a fulfilled millionaire. And a millionaire is not going way, way beyond the dollar amount. It's a state of mind when your finances are handled, you have abundance, but you're appreciating, you're in gratitude with your abundance. And it lines up to the 4-dimensional pillars of purpose, having purpose wealth, time wealth, you're controlling your time in a way that you love to control your time, your community, your relationships, like the way you are with your partners, that community relationship wealth. Also, the relationship and community wealth you have with your audience, your LinkedIn audience, with the people on your podcast, the young entrepreneurs. That's all deep, and your family. That's all deep relationship wealth. And of course, it all sits on the back of having your health, because health is your energy. Without this, you and I don't get to sit here and do this. So like today I was just thinking, I'm just so grateful. Like I was at the chiropractor earlier today. He's like, your back is just so relaxed. He's like, I can't even adjust you today. I said, I just feel good. And then it's like, I'm in gratitude. I don't really need an adjustment.
Right.
No, so I feel like you're really living a lot of the pillars of 4-dimensional wealth.
Well, I'm happy about that. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, me too, by the way. Believe me, I struggled for so long. And I think the struggle, to your point, the struggle makes it that much sweeter. The thing to remember is what you're doing is you share it with other people. You share that you lift people up. And I was just reading this. I'm reading this book now about the higher energetic levels of giving within Judaism, but it's probably Judeo-Christian, I would guess. But the highest level of giving is when you give someone not money, but when you can give someone information or a talent or a skill that they no longer need to ask again. There's 8 levels. There's 8 energetic levels of giving, and that's the highest. So I think what you and I are talking about is this idea of giving people, hopefully, the highest level of skills so that they can go off and do it themselves and they can become their own, call it millionaire, whatever you want to call it, wealthy, whatever we call wealthy. Well, true wealth is probably the best way to say it. So Adam, that's all I got on my side. Anything else you want to share before we wrap this up?
This was great. Thanks for having me.
Super fun. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Adam. I think it's really, really clear to see that being an entrepreneurship is more than being a business leader. It's being a creative, an artist, and sticking through the tough times. By the way, if you're interested in this episode and learning more about the 4 dimensions of wealth, we are having an upcoming seminar here in Austin, Texas, April 5th and 6th, called The Fulfilled Millionaire, a 4-dimensional framework to wealth. In this 2-day event, we're going to go deep into both mindset and financial frameworks, not to mention meeting some of the most amazing, successful people on the planet. My friends, my team, and 20 lucky people who get to join me on this journey. To find out more, just go to www.mastering4dwealth.com, and the details for my program are there. See you in the next episode.